In this video, you're going to learn an alternative to using closures in certain scenarios in ES6, this time using LED scoping. So we've got three buttons here with IDs 0, 1 and 2. So what we're going to do, we're going to run a for loop and attach an event to each button. So for, so we're going to initialize the variable I to 0, and we're going to use var here instead of let's. We're going to come back to let's later. So the condition is I less than 3, and every time we increment I by 1. So to select the button, we're going to select it using its ID, and we're going to attach the event listener like this, using a function expression. So the function is just going to do something like logging I. So as you know, if you run this and you click on any of these buttons, the result is always going to be 3. So let's explain this, and you can have that as a quick reminder because you already understand the reason why we're getting 3. So when you define the event here, you are storing the function literally like that. So the function is going to be stored like this, okay, and attached to each of those click events. So when you call the function, once you click on the button, the function is going to look for the value of I, and it's going to look for it in the outer environment of the function. Now the outer environment of this function is the global scope, and that's where you're going to find the value of I. Now this function is looking for values in its outer environment, so this function is also a closure, by the way. So technically it's a closure. Now the only value of I stored in the memory is the last one, which is 3. Alright, so that's why we get 3 all the time. Now when covering closures, we found a solution to this. So the solution in ES5 was to use a closure. Now the closure is going to be a new function. So let's call it f, and this function returns a function. So the function returned is the closure. So return a function, which is that one. Alright, so now this function is returning a closure. So now instead of running this code, we're going to run another piece of code where instead of storing a function expression, we store a function call, f of I. So now, when defining the event, you are storing f of 0, f of 1, and so on. All right. So each of these functions return a closure, which is this function. And it's a closure because it's got access to the value of x in its outer environment. And every time you're going to have the rise value of x, which is 0, 1, and 2. All right. So now let's save and try again. And now you get the correct values. All right. So that's how we used to do it in ES5. Now, let's try with let. So this time we're going to run the same code we had at the beginning. But instead of var, we're going to use let. So let's comment everything else. And let's save and try our code. And this time it is working without having to recourse to closures. So in ES6, I will get a new binding for every iteration of this loop. So what does it mean? So this means that every closure or every function is going to capture a different I. So every iteration basically creates a new lexical scope. So you get the correct value of I inside each of those scopes. While in ES5, we had only one closure capturing one value of I, which is the last one. So that's the difference with ES6's let. So this solves a lot of problems. So you don't have to use closures anymore when doing a loop like that. You get the correct value straight away by using let.